Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we have a disturbing and uncomfortable read, but it must happen. These are the things that are happening, and we're winning a little bit of the culture war in this aspect here. I don't, like I said before, I don't think the transgender thing is going to be a too big of a spread because it seems a lot of people are coming out in a great big fashion, and they're not being able to defend themselves very much anymore. Of course, because we would have states across the country kind of going around and banning this, and Democrats are starting to lose suit as well. This is going on, and what I mean by this is that woman who lost breast, uterus to sex change, who sues doctors, mental health providers who facilitated her transition. A detransitioned Ontario woman who was prescribed testosterone and underwent both a bariatric mastectomy and a hysterectomy during a mental health crisis in which she believed herself to be a man is suing the healthcare providers who allegedly facilitated her medical transition. Michelle Zacchigna, I think that's her last name, 34 of Aurelia, has filed legal action against a total of 8 doctors and mental health professionals who treated her during the years that she identified as transgender. Zacchigna alleges that each failed to address her complex mental health needs and instead allowed her self-diagnose as transgender and undergo irreversible procedures that she only now deeply regrets. I will live the rest of my life without breasts, with a deepened voice and a male pattern balding, and without the ability to get pregnant. Removing my completely healthy uterus is my greatest regret. The statement of claim filed to the Ontario Superior Court of Justice documents a series of the Zacchigna, what is her? I'm going to call her Michelle for when that ever comes up because I don't want to keep butchering it. Said our failings spanning years of treatment. Michelle began pursuing medical transition in 2010 when the affirmative model of gender care was still in its infancy. Under this model, clinicians affirm a patient's self-diagnosis of a transgender identity and provide medical interventions such as hormone therapy and surgeries rather than traditional exploratory psychotherapy. Michelle endured a severe bullying as a child and experienced serious mental health issues throughout her teenage years as a result. Later, I would learn that I experienced in childhood was a development trauma. She wrote, "It affected the trajectory of my life, but my personal completely changed. I went from a loud, fierce, opinionated child to a passive, shy teenager with low self-esteem," which seems to happen a lot to these type of people when they want to do transgender or whatever. The doctors and nurses and everybody that are involved, technically they prey on these people. They go after these people that have bad home upbringings or bad life by life in general, and prey on them to do the surgery. And that's what they do, and that's more reason to say these people are absolute sick monsters. In 2009, at the age of 21, after years of depression, anxiety, self-harm, and a suicide attempt, she discovered the concept of gender identity on Tumblr and became convinced that all her problems were because she was transgender. Online, I was sucked into a world where it felt like I was finally somewhere I belonged. In places like Tumblr, there was a constant reassurance that only trans people spend so much time thinking about their gender not actually true, and that every trans person has doubts about transitioning, she explained. Michelle also became convinced that embracing this new identity was the solution to all her problems, and in spring of 2010 attended a support group of the Sherbourne Health Centre in Toronto called Gender Journeys. Here she met defendant Rupert Raj, who referred her for male hormone therapy after just one appointment lasting under an hour. Michelle also received a recommendation from her regular therapist, defendant Nadine Lulu, whom she had started to see following her suicide attempt in 2008. In July 2010, the lawsuit states that Lulu concluded that Michelle was an ideal candidate for hormone therapy despite being aware of her long history of serious mental health issues. Dr. Rick Galindo, also defendant, signed the July letter in his role as Lulu's supervisor, recommending Michelle for hormone therapy even though he had never met her. After 3 appointments at St. Jamestown Health Centre with defendant Dr. Pamela Leese, Michelle was prescribed testosterone. Neither Leese nor her supervisor, defendant Dr. Cavity, consulted with a psychiatrist or psychologist prior to initiating the powerful male hormone. In 2012, Cavity and Leese wrote a letter recommending Michelle for a medically unnecessary bilateral mastectomy. As the surgery was not covered by Ontario health insurance at the time, Michelle chose a surgeon in Florida and paid out of pocket to have her health breast removed. healthy breast removed. Cavacuti and Lease continued to prescribe Michelle testosterone under Cavaculi's departure from the center in around 2014 when defendant Dr. Susan Turner took over being Michelle's testosterone provider, also allegedly without attention to her patient's complex mental health needs. In 2015, 9 years after her suicide attempt and 8 years after coming out as transgender, Lulu finally referred Michelle for a full psychological and diagnostic assessment, and the resulting 25-page document revealed ADHD, TikTok disorder, borderline personality disorder, anxiety disorders, autism spectrum disorder, and traits of PTSD. Defendant Linda Broden, the supervising psychologist who performed the diagnostic assessment, reportedly did not analyze or consider whether Michelle met the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, nor whether there was a link between her patient's gender distress and her multiple comorbidities. At this point, Michelle had stopped taking testosterone and was identifying as non-binary. In 2019, Turner referred Michelle to defendant Dr. Rajesh Shah to explore a potential hysterectomy procedure, not noting her history of depression and ADHD and the fact that she was identifying as non-binary and not on any hormones. Shah removed his uterus in May 2018. I wasn't in a great place mentally at the time, so I can't really remember why I thought it was a good idea, except that for trans people, it was covered by professional insurance, and I like the idea of not having any more periods or PAMP exams. Michelle later said that of her hysterectomy. 2 years later, after her hysterectomies, Michelle realized that her mental health diagnosis and her developmental disabilities explained everything she had been through. Much more sublimity, I think that's how you pronounce that word, I might be horribly correct, than identifying as a transgender ever had. She then made the decision to detransition. Michelle alleges that all the defendants failed to address her serious mental health issues and developmental disabilities, and instead only after irreversible medical interventions. She alleges that her desire to become transgender was never challenged and alternative treatment options were never offered. The defendants permitted Michelle to self-diagnose as transgender and prescribe her own treatment without providing a differential diagnosis or proposing alternative treatments, reads the claim. Michelle has struggled to come to terms with the permanent changes from her hormone treatments, and hysterectomy surgery have caused a low voice, male pattern, balding facial hair, and a large clitoris, a flat chest, and an inability to ever become pregnant. It's been 11 years since my mastectomy. About 90% of the time, I've accepted what my chest looks like. Michelle wrote in a recent blog post. But there are still moments where I remove my shirt to change, my breath catches, and my mind leaves my body, and I have no way of predicting when it will happen. This reality will never go away from me. I will still be living in this body long after everyone has moved on to whatever the next big scandal is. Acknowledging that I cannot bear my own children has been devastating. Some days, the pain of what I've done to myself is overwhelming. I cry and I can't stop. Other days, I'm angered that I wasn't screened for the diagnosis I later received before I was prescribed hormones. Michelle says her advocacy is largely not done for herself because what happened to her cannot be undone, but it is in the hopes of preventing it from happening to someone else. It took me 10 years to figure out why I would have falsely believed something like this, and why so many professionals could have wrongly encouraged it. I can imagine that there are a lot of people who eventually find themselves in my position, some of them vulnerable adults like I was, and some of them too young to understand the long-term consequences, she said in her crowdfunding video. Through this action, I am not only seeking justice for myself, but also hoping to raise awareness about the recklessness of gender-affirming healthcare. Michelle is being represented by Francis Shapiro Munn on a contingency basis, but is crowdfunding for out-of-pocket expenses such as obtaining medical records and hiring experts. Michelle is one of the several disastrous people bringing legal action against the gender-affirming care providers whom they allege harmed them by failing to address underlying mental health needs. In the U.S., Chloe Cole and Camille Kiefel are suing the healthcare providers who facilitate their medical transition. Kiefel, like Michelle, was vulnerable, mentally ill adult when allowed to consent to irreversible medical interventions. Cole was just a child of 13. In Australia, Jay Londigos is suing the psychiatrist who allowed her to begin medical transition while she too was going through a mental health crisis. And in England, Richie Hearn is bringing legal action against doctors who allowed him to consent to thermotherapy and the amputation of his penis while he was in a similar state of mental distress. As I said, guys, people are coming out, and there's finally a battle happening. We need to back these people. We need to help these people because we need to stop this madness from happening. These doctors are evil. These people are evil. The Democrats are causing this, and there's no other way to really solve this issue than to really sue the hell out of them and fix this. The fact that this is going on continuously is beyond me, and I hope that these people get their lawsuits resolved and actually have some type of win, because this is evil. And like I said, guys, before, this is a time thing. It's all a ticking time bomb. All this will eventually come out. It just takes years to happen. Half a decade, maybe a decade, like this woman. So it may not happen now immediately, which we're actually seeing it is, but it's going to be a way bigger issue in the coming years. I promise you, because a lot of people are going to come out and a lot of people are going to step up to this. It takes time, and time can always be very painful to withstand at times, but we're pushing back. Let's help push back and fight for these people as well. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Like, subscribe, share, and as always, take care.